What happens to kids during childhood shapes who they become as adults. Today, we say it's time to change the way we represent, treat, and protect our children in America. All kids deserve a good chance at life. It starts in childhood. Child sex abuse is a type of maltreatment, violation, and exploitation that refers to the involvement of the child in sexual activity to provide sexual gratification or financial benefit to the perpetrator. It includes contact for sexual purposes, molestation, statutory rape, prostitution, pornography, exposure, incest, or other sexually exploitative activities. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18 years old. Over 65,000 children were sexually abused in 2019. 8.6% of reported child abuse cases were sexual abuse. 34% of people who sexually abuse a child are family members. Here are some more statistics about child sex abuse and the wide-ranging and very serious physical and mental consequences to the victims. Child sexual abuse exploits and degrades children and can cause serious damage to cognitive, social, and emotional development of a child. As a society, we have a collective responsibility to prevent child sexual abuse. To accomplish this, we must initiate and support services and policies that enhance children's development, health, and safety, and we must advocate for policies and programs to help meet the basic needs of children and families. Civil and criminal lawsuits involving sexual abuse have gained much-needed attention over the past few years and have brought this child sex abuse epidemic to a much better light. More prominent among these have been the civil and criminal lawsuits against the Catholic Church and some of its defrocked clergy. Jeffrey Epstein, the University of Southern California, Harvey Weinstein, Michigan State University, Larry Nassar, Bill Cosby, and Jerry Sandusky. Victims of sexual assault have finally started to see their perpetrators face justice. Sexual predators are now being prosecuted and victims compensated. This national attention hopefully will lead to changes that will help prevent future abuse from occurring. Here are some of the most recent cases to hold these sexual predators accountable in the Predators Hall of Shame. Catholic dioceses have paid more than $3.8 billion to settle claims of more than 8,600 victims of sexual assault by members of the Catholic clergy. Over many decades, priests and lay members of religious orders within the Roman Catholic Church sexually abused children. Rather than report the abuse to law enforcement, the Catholic Church reassigned the perpetrators to other parishes where they were able to continue contact with youth. Jeffrey Epstein. On July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in New York and charged by federal prosecutors with engaging in sexual trafficking of minors, in which he paid girls as young as 14 to have sex with him at his Upper East Side home and his estate in Palm Beach. In 2008, Epstein entered a non-prosecution deal with federal prosecutors in Miami, involving similar allegations of sexual trafficking of minors. Epstein was allowed to plead guilty to 2 state prostitution charges and served just 13 months in prison. While in prison, he was permitted to leave the prison 6 days per week for up to 12 hours per day to attend to his businesses. University of Southern California. On May 29, 2018, the Los Angeles Police Department began investigating complaints from 52 women who were patients of Dr. George Tyndall. Dr. Tyndall was a gynecologist at the University of Southern California for 26 years. Law enforcement stated that the gynecological exams conducted by Tyndall went beyond normal and acceptable medical practice. The Los Angeles police are working with prosecutors to determine what crimes were committed by Tyndall. Tyndall examined more than 10,000 students at USC during the period 1990 through 2016. In 2016, Cindy Gilbert, a senior nurse, reported Tyndall to USC's Rape Crisis Center. A few days later, she discovered photographs of patients' genitalia in Tyndall's office. The photographs went back as far as the 1990s. On October 19, 2018, USC announced that it agreed to a $215 million settlement in a federal class action lawsuit filed on behalf of women treated by George Tyndall during his tenure at USC. Harvey Weinstein. On May 25, 2018, entertainment mogul Harvey Weinstein was arrested in New York and charged with rape, sex abuse, and sexual misconduct. The criminal charges arise from the statements of two women. More than 80 women, however, have come forward and accused Weinstein of sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and/or rape. The lead prosecutor in the case stated that Weinstein used his power, money, and position to lure young women into situations where he was able to violate them sexually. Weinstein was convicted in New York and sentenced to 23 years in prison for rape and sexual abuse. He currently faces another trial in Los Angeles, California. Michigan State University. On May 16, 2018, Michigan State University reached a $500 million settlement with 332 victims of Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar sexually assaulted women in his role as a USA Gymnastics national team doctor and as an osteopathic physician at MSU. This settlement covers women abused by Nassar, even women who have not yet come forward to tell their stories. Additionally, victims of Nassar still have claims against USA Gymnastics, the United States Olympic Committee, and others. Larry Nassar, as of February 2018, has pled guilty to 10 counts of sexual assault on a minor. He was sentenced to 300 years in prison. When Nassar was arrested in December 2016, law enforcement found 37,000 images of child pornography and a video of Nassar molesting underage girls. Bill Cosby. On April 26, 2018, entertainer Bill Cosby was found guilty of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault for drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant. During the trial, 6 witnesses testified how Cosby drugged them in situations that occurred from the early 1980s until 2004. More than 60 women have come forward to describe similar behavior Cosby forced on them. Jerry Sandusky. On June 22, 2012, Jerry Sandusky, a former assistant football coach at Penn State University, was found guilty of 8 counts of involuntary, deviant sexual intercourse, 1 count of criminal intent to commit indecent assault, and 9 counts of unlawful contact with minors. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison. Sandusky had been charged with 52 counts of sexual abuse of young boys during the period 1994 to 2009. He met his victims through the Second Mile, a nonprofit charity he founded that served Pennsylvania's underprivileged and at-risk youth. Penn State University. As of November 2017, Penn State University had paid $100 million in settlements because of Jerry Sandusky's sexually assaulting more than 30 boys over a 15-year period. These sexual assaults occurred in part because of the privileges and access Sandusky received as an assistant football coach at Penn State. The university also paid a $60 million fine to the NCAA. Additionally, Penn State President Graham Spanier was convicted of child endangerment. The Boy Scouts of America. In April 2010, an Oregon jury awarded $18.5 million to a 38-year-old man who was sexually abused by his volunteer scout leader when he was 12. The evidence showed the Boy Scouts of America knew Assistant Scoutmaster Timmer Dykes had abused children but allowed him to remain as a volunteer and to have continued contact with adolescents. As a part of the trial, it was revealed that in the 1920s, the Boy Scouts of America implemented an internal red flag system to identify scout leaders considered ineligible to hold positions as scout leaders. Documents involving individuals suspected of child sex abuse were kept secret and became part of the BSA's perversion files. BSA identified many thousands of BSA scout leaders who were placed in the perversion files as potential pedophiles. Yet many of these were allowed continued access to Boy Scouts. Child molesters come from all economic backgrounds, geographic areas, and include every ethnicity, race, and creed. The sole characteristic all child molesters share is having thoughts about being sexual with children and acting on those thoughts. These individuals actively seek access to children and the opportunity to be alone with them. Also, contrary to stranger danger warnings, child molesters are rarely strangers. At least 90% of sexually abused children are abused by someone the child and/or the family knows, someone in the child's immediate or extended family, or someone close to the family. In this insider-exclusive network TV special, America's Child Sex Abuse Crisis, What You Need to Know, our news team visits with Michael Fiumara, founder and partner at the Fiumara and Milligan law firm in Santa Rosa, whose law firm has successfully pursued and won significant compensation in multiple child sex abuse cases against the Catholic Church and for victims of sexual abuse. They handle sexual abuse, assault, and harassment cases that occur from the church, employment, school, athletics, high-profile individuals, the Boy Scouts, and other organized social groups. He will discuss who can bring a lawsuit in California for sexual abuse, AB 218, what it means for survivors of child sex abuse. How do you prove a molestation case? Can you sue a teacher for sexual abuse? How common is molestation of children by priests? Why do priests molest children? How long do you have to file a claim? How do you pick a client in a case? How is each case story different, and how do you convey that to a jury? What is a true commitment to people? How to make a difference in this world and a change for the future? As Michael has often said, the problem of child sex abuse is much more widespread than most Americans are willing to admit. When sex abuse cases dominate headlines, a familiar pattern often emerges. If it took place at a large organization, be it a church, a large state university, or a group such as USA Gymnastics, misconduct is often covered up in hopes of saving the institution's reputation and the money that accompanies it. Michael has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in California. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people become victims of these institutions. He understands that sexual abuse is one of the most serious, enduring, and divisive human right violations in the United States. The problem is not just in California, but nationwide, and its nature is institutionalized. And because of that, he is driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. His goals, not only to get justice for his clients, but to ensure that these child sex predators are brought to justice and the institutions who help cover up their horrific crimes are exposed, and just compensation is awarded to each and every victim through the American civil legal system. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Santa Rosa, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce Michael Fiumara to the show. Welcome to the show, Michael.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm. What type of law do you practice?
Well, we started this law firm in 1992 in Santa Rosa, California. Started off as law offices of Michael Fiumara. Soon I associated with other counsel, and now we have a firm that's referred to as Fiumara Milligan Law. We practice in the areas of civil rights litigation. We're always on the side of the poor, the downtrodden, and those who are victims or survivors, whether it's sexual abuse or civil rights violations. And that's what we have been since the very beginning. We do criminal defense because we don't believe everybody should be put into a prison and into a rehab. Well, rehab is more the going way that we see things. We want people to be helped. So we do that as far as our mainstay, but we have a family law attorney who's a specialist, and she's incredible. We also have Noreen Evans, who joined our firm to work with us in terms of very specialized appeals cases. And we take on the school districts, which I'm very proud to say that we do with almost a vengeance, because they are brutal to the kids sometimes during suspension and expulsion hearings. That's something we really don't like for them to overreach, especially with education. Once the educational learning is interfered with the suspension or expulsion, especially an expulsion, it's over for some kids. So that's it in a nutshell.
Now, there are all types of law a lawyer can practice.
That's right.
They can work for the big guys. They can work for the major corporations, the Exxon, the Mobiles, the IBMs of the world. But you don't do that.
No, they have a flotilla of attorneys on their side, and I want to even the playing field. So I work for those who need us and who can benefit from our law firm's advocacy and fierceness. I wasn't born in Brooklyn for nothing.
I often have found that people like yourself who are driven, have a mission to help those that are less fortunate than us, had something happen maybe in their past that drives them. Is there something in your history?
Glad you said that, because that's true. I saw how my father, who had a third grade education, had an Italian accent, and how he was treated as an Italian American. I see that with our clients today, the Hispanic clients, the Latino clients. And I speak Spanish as a result because I really believe I can communicate. What I like to do is fight hard for people who have it rough. And it gives me great pleasure. Like you said, I'll never retire. No, I won't. I think I'm going to fight until I'm in the grave, because I really do believe in justice. That's what drives me, fairness. So I saw how my father was treated, and he was fierce. He took a bone, and I'll have to explain. They said to him, "Mr. Fiumara, we're not going to give you your permit." And he's like, "Well, why not?" "Well, we made the decision." It was an arbitrary and capricious decision. This was at a planning board meeting. I have my master's degree in city planning, so there you go. They said to him, "We're not going to do it." And my sister needed a bedroom. He walks in with a bone that he got from a Brooklyn butcher and slammed it on the table and said, "Here's your bone of contention." And the police tried to arrest him, but he said, "I know my First Amendment right." That scared them. Third grade education, he was fierce. Here I am with a degree in master's in city planning from an Ivy League institution, Phi Beta Kappa, Rutgers. And sometimes I'm fearful. No, I'm not. I have my bulldozers, and I also have my steamroller right over their heads. That's how I really feel. That's why I'm very much a lawyer. I'm fighting for the people.
You know, Michael, the reason we're doing this special on child abuse is there's so many cases where children have been violated by people in authority, people they're supposed to respect, like in the church, like in schools, like in a variety of places. Who can bring a lawsuit in the state of California when a child has been violated?
It's a good question, and it's because of AB 218 that it's been broadened a great deal. Who can bring a lawsuit? Anyone who has been abused. And now the time frame has been widened from 26 years old, which is a really artificial cap, because most people don't even realize the effect of the abuse and devastation in their lives until it's too late. So now it's been broadened to the age 40, and then there's a window of opportunity. They call it a justice for 3 years, or a window of justice for 3 years, where someone could be 66 years old. And we have this with a client who is 66 years old and realized, my 3 failed marriages, and I'm seeing all of this Boy Scout issues and their bankruptcy. What are they doing, the Boy Scouts of America? And he realized when he looked back at his troop and went on Facebook, oh my God, I was raped. And he said, I didn't realize this until recently. And then he goes back to his records when he, after the military, trying to escape, he did get counseling for a while, and something like that reappears, and then it gets quashed by his feelings. He gets married, that marriage fails. Again, alcoholism, whatever it might be, there are some people that are affected differently by different traumatic events. So post-traumatic stress syndrome, it's real. And we're realizing, and I think the legislature realized that the scientific research shows that everybody is affected differently by some form of trauma. And so they're allowing for the age to be increased to 40. And then, like I said, the window of justice is 3 years. So 3 years, the 66-year-old man has the ability to open up his case, even though he's beyond 40. And that 3 years is one of the new parameters. The other, believe it or not, is a 5-year window when you have the knowledge, or you have the reasonable feeling, or you have reason to know that you were molested. There's a 5-year statute that lengthens the time. So there's all this built-in protection. And what's also nice is there's built-in protection for concealment. So if the church continues to do what they're doing, and that means move the church, the priest from parish to parish, and there's evidence of concealment, there's treble damages 3 times. So people need to know these cases are very valuable. That's why you see all these attorneys out there advertising, but we don't really have to advertise. We have done these cases in Sonoma and Marin counties, and we've gotten millions of dollars for our clients before the law was liberalized, before the law was changed. We just have a lot of experience. So what your answer to that question is, anybody can really bring a lawsuit, and age is almost ageless because of the built-in parameters, the 3-year versus 5-year. So it's a really liberal law.
Now, oftentimes when you sue a predator, a pedophile, there's another defendant that's added to it, and that is their supervisor.
Correct.
And oftentimes their supervisor was aware of what took place. For example, going to the clergy sex abuse cases. Doesn't have to be Catholic, it could be any sort of religion, right? Many of these institutions seek to protect themselves against lawsuits by claiming, or by not doing something, or not admitting that a priest or any minister is violating children's rights, correct?
That's right.
So they're added to the case, aren't they?
They're added to the case. But under this new law, the notice provision has been weakened, which means before you had to show some notice, actual notice that somebody in the organization knew or should have known that this abuse was going on. Now, under AB 218, the knowledge part has been reduced to they should have had something in place to prevent this. They should have had some supervision. They should have had something that's going to prevent these kinds of things from happening. And the law and the language helps us get in the door. And like we have several Christian camp organizations where girls had been violated over many years until they became adults. Then they realized what was going on. They got their counseling, but then they forgot about it, thinking the statute of limitations has passed. And they really thought that. They moved on in their lives, and well, this new law has come out to help them pick up the pieces because they've had such a destructive behavioral pattern. It's so evident that both of them were severely sexually assaulted. And the new law is sexual assault. It's changed the language considerably, and it's broadened the ability for people to bring actions. And they need to do that to heal. How else are you going to heal? You have to realize you have a problem, the counseling, and we have the best counselors money can buy. And we really believe they need to do that for themselves.
Hardly in any show, and this is why we want to do this show, do we talk about why do priests, why do adults abuse children? Why do they sexually abuse children? You've handled a lot of these cases. You've seen these monsters. What is the common thread with each and every one of them that they want to destroy the emotional security and trust that a child needs to grow into a an everyday, ordinary type of a person?
I'm glad you asked that question because I've thought of it myself, and there's two parts to it. One is control. Sometimes it's not the sex per se, but it's controlling, it's getting into somebody's head and really destroying them, and knowing it to be that maybe it's not the sex so much, the violence of it, but it's damaging their psyche. That's part of it. The other part is many of these individuals who have had sex with minors and who have had sex, like some of the priests with their parishioners, have raped them, who sodomized them, who beat them, or any of the other sexual things that they've done. Some of the fetishes I won't get into on air, but they were victims themselves. So the cycle needs to be broken, and we really want to break the cycle. And the way to do that is to punish those who are responsible and punish those who have the money to help pay for the psychological care to heal. So there's no more cycling of this. And the church needs to grow up. They're the ones that are the moral consciousness and the moral compass of our society. They need to take the lead for once. They get enough tax advantages. They get enough of everything else society has to offer. They need to step up. And I point to the church because I'm a Catholic, and I'm one of 11 kids, and I went to catechism, communion, confirmation, and I know that it was very easy for the priests to molest and abuse kids because with my own eyes, I saw how much leeway they had and where they were held up as the next best thing to God on the planet.
Not only is there violations and sexual assaults in the church, but this show is about child sex abuse, not only in the church, but also in public schools.
Absolutely.
And you've seen that before?
Yes, I have.
Special needs, training programs, foster
care is big.
So let's talk a little bit about children who are institutionalized. Could be in juvenile hall, right? Talk a little bit about something.
I will. What's good about this new law in California is that you no longer have to sue the government under the Government Tort Claims Act, which means that's a 6-month statute of limitations. That's abolished. So it opens up the door for these governmental entities to hold the line, to do a better job at foster care. I have one young man who was transferred to foster care 2 or 3 times during his life. He even explained that he was being abused by this family sexually. They just put him back in the same home. And we're taking his case. And he didn't even want to sue. He just said, look, I have all these issues and problems. You think it's from being raped, being penetrated, being fondled and thrown into the water and submerged and then forced to have sex? I said, I think so. Besides, you better go to a counselor too. And we set him up. It's really tragic. And then what happens is, many times, the same person who's been sexualized and violated and abused, they'll do it to someone else. So like I said, cut the cycle, break the cycle. And I think this law is a really good attempt by the legislature to do that.
Right. You represent children in schools, special needs kids.
Yes.
You see abuse everywhere.
I do.
What makes your law firm different from other law firms to handle cases like this?
First of all, I have a real good background in education law, and I have actually sued school districts successfully and have had appeals overturned. And I should say we've appealed and won expulsion cases and abuse cases, and we have a few of them going on right now. I have a special love of education because that's what makes a society great. The smarter the populace, the better off they are. And so education is the forerunner of the better society or the great society. If someone's being abused sexually in school, then that has to end because that's going to prevent them from learning. And we've done these kinds of cases before, and school districts are very, very protective of themselves. They circle the wagon. And I like to fight that, and I like to stand up to them. I call many of these administrators nylon Nazis. They're horrible. Some of my worst cases have been against school districts, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I've won against them because they're in transit. They're just entrenched powerhouses. They have too much authority, and it's unfair. The poor teachers, many of them are victims themselves of abuse in terms of how the administrators treat them. But we're different because our law firm has a lot of experience in counseling law. We know what works and what doesn't. We have a counselor who worked with the cases in Los Angeles. She was one of the main counselors who the defense listened to and the plaintiffs. And they really heard from her that she is the authority. And what she says, they believe. And so that helps settle a case. I mean, obviously we know if you have someone that appears to be neutral and who's smart and on top of it, will win.
Finally, what message do you have to the audience, to victims of child sex abuse? What do you want to say to them?
If you feel like you're a victim, then you really ought to find a lawyer, a group of attorneys. And I wish Noreen was here. She's a phenomenal advocate. She wrote the legislation that is now the forerunner of this country's legislation on victims and victimization. Please get the help you need. Please see the best counselor you can and see us. A free consultation. What we'll do is we'll actually sit down with you, COVID distancing and whatever it takes, but we'll listen. I don't care how many hours it takes, but I want to hear your story and I want to hear what you're telling us so we can help you get not only the right counselors as well, but the compensation you deserve, because someone should be responsible for this. Somebody wasn't paying attention and obviously you were hurt, you were injured, and that's just not right. It's time for justice.
I want to thank you for doing this special.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.